What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a all-new episode of Pack-A-Day Live. We, of course, are live, and I could not be more excited to be joined by my two guests tonight. First of all, it's Oh Hey, It's Shanna. You can follow her on Twitter at Oh Hey, It's Shanna. And she is, of course, you can find her on 106.1 FM, 96.3 Star Country. She is on the Packers postgame show on the Packers Radio Network. Shanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so fun because I have listened to you for quite some time, as I've told you before I started doing stuff with Pack-A-Day. And so I'm really excited to be here because I would honestly use you as almost my show prep for anything Packers related because, I do the halftime and the postgame reports for the Packers Radio Network. And I hang out with Drew and KB on 97.3 The Game. So all the sports all the time.
Absolutely amazing. That's super kind of you to say. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. I butchered your intro because somehow I put Janet's information in between your information. So my apologies. But I'm also joined by the one and only Janet Wilson. You can find her on the Lombardi Suite podcast, the founder and host of Cheese All That. You can find her on Twitter at OJanJan. Janet Wilson, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I feel like I've been friends with you for so long and finally getting to know you virtually, but unfortunately we didn't get to meet at the game because it went so fast. It went so fast at the home opener, but soon. I'm always up there anyway, so we'll find a way.
It'll happen eventually, I'm sure. I'm so excited to talk to you both virtually. Unfortunately, like you said, we've never had the opportunity to talk Packers in person, but if you can't talk in person, what better way than to do it right here on Pack-A-Day Live, of course. So we've got a ton to go over. I have so many things that I want to discuss about this Packers team that we're going to, obviously go over tonight. I want to start actually with Eric Stokes because he just got back from injury. Finally practiced this week. It sounded like not only did he have all the stuff that he went through in the offseason and last year with the Liz Frank injury and a bunch of other things that happened, but now he was dealing with the H word that has plagued this Packers team all throughout the season, a hamstring injury as well.
I don't mean to laugh, but I just thought of our tweet when we were talking about how we should sell like the wristbands. I was like, let's just use the wristbands.
Yeah, we need hamstring awareness.
Hamstring awareness.
We need hamstring awareness in Green Bay. Oh, it's ridiculous. But Shanna, I will start with you. Eric Stokes back practicing. Your thoughts on him being back and finally practicing with the team?
I mean, I think it's great, especially, we're so on the fence. Like, is Jair going to play? Is he not going to play? I think that having him back in the rotation is going to be fantastic. So happy about that. And like you said, I mean, this Packers team cannot catch a break when it comes to injuries. So after almost a year of being out, right? I think it was November of last year that Stokes was out. So I'm excited to see him back out there. And yeah, I think that it's going to be great.
No, I think so too. Janet, how are you feeling about it?
I'm excited that he's back as well. Our defense is in dire need. They're in dire need. Like you said, hamstring awareness. It's funny because whenever I post my workouts, people are like, you need to show these Packer players how to stretch right before, how to actually work out because of those hamstring injuries. So, our defense at this point, I feel like anyone we could get back on right now with these injuries is help at this point. So yeah, I'm excited that he's back and he brings good energy to the team as well.
Yeah, that was something
like that's great social content. You should do like every injury, how they should stretch. Like if you have this injury, then you need to do this more or this yoga move, whatever it is, because this team needs you.
Oh, yes.
We need Janet TikToks of you doing different stretch. You pulled your hamstring. Here's what you're going to do from now on. Lots of water, this exact stretch. You can do it for, quad, ACL, like everything, if maybe you and David Bakhtiari can get together and get on some sort of regime that might help as well. But no, I'm great. Like I'm always for more content. So I like the idea, Shanna.
Thank you.
What's that?
I said, thank you. I feel like my stream is a little bit off. I don't know if it's off for you guys too.
It was for a second. I think you're back to normal now. I meant to mention, by the way, Kelvin, thanks so much for being here. And thanks so much for being a new YouTube member. You are the absolute best. Gary, I'm not sure what your comment exactly means, but I see that you are obviously here as a member as well. So thanks so much for doing that. Obviously, any sort of super chats or anything, we will get to and answer any of your questions. If you guys do have questions, start asking and we'll answer as the course of the evening goes along. You might see Janet in her Brewers hat. Of course, we're keeping a close eye on the Brewers game as well. I had to do a little bit of a different setup today. Usually my light's over here blocking my TV, but I have to see the Brewers score as well. So we can kind of treat this as a Brewers watch along as well. But going back to Eric Stokes for just a second, obviously this is a first round pick. You go back to the Georgia three, as I like to call them, that the 3 first round picks, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Eric Stokes, 2 last year, 1 the year before that being Stokes. To me, so much of this defense is going to hinge upon their success. And we've seen a little bit of a step from Quay. I think it's been a little quiet lately for Devontae. Stokes had a really nice rookie year. And then I thought his second year was a little bit more up and down, with probably a little bit more downs than I think we probably would have liked. But these are 3 tremendously talented players. And like I said, I think 3 players that are really going to make or break this Packers defense over the course of their careers, and whether they turn out or not. So getting him back and then seeing how they use him, does he still have that 4.340 speed? Like, I think there's a lot of questions that are going to need to be asked there, but no 2 ways about it, getting him back on the field. And you, I think one of you mentioned, I forget, just the energy he brings right away. First practice back, him and Jair doing seatbelt celebrations at practice. Like, they were back bringing the energy right away. So in every facet, this is going to be a great get back for Green Bay with Stokes back practicing.
Yeah, we need all that, you guys. I mean, really, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, as much health as they can get at this point. Of course, their injury list is still a mile long, but they are getting some guys back. Speaking of which, the good news on Tuesday was not only that, obviously that Stokes returned to practice, but Jair returned to practice, Elton Jenkins returned to practice, Luke Musgrave returned to practice. So those were all really good signs. If Musgrave was already practicing with a helmet on Tuesday, his chances of clearing protocol by Monday Night Football would seemingly be extremely good. So hopefully that's a good sign. Jair practiced a little bit last week and still did not play in the game. Back injuries can be finicky. Janet, maybe you can tell us what he needs to do to clear that back injury in time. But obviously Elton Jenkins coming off the sprained MCL as well. He seemed to be back in much, just moving around better and actually practicing as well. So Janet, I'll start with you this time. Jair, Elton, Musgrave, all back at practice. Which one are you most excited about? Which one's most important? And what are you kind of looking for those 3 this week?
I think Jair. I'm so excited for him to come back, especially if we're going to be going up against Davante Adams. I still think Davante Adams is a high caliber, wide receiver, no matter where he goes. So I think that we're going to need Jair at this point, just to have that matchup at the same level. I'm excited for Elton and Musgraves as well. The chemistry that Musgraves has with Love has been phenomenal, in my opinion. I think they have very good chemistry. I just think they're very young, but I feel like it's going to be fun to see them grow together throughout the season. But I'm just happy to have this team, starting to come back from week 1. I feel like week 1, it was so fun. And then we ended up with all these injuries. So having the team complete from week 1 is going to be great. And, I'm looking at my notes. Sorry.
Me too. I keep looking down too. I'm like, okay, what did I put down for this?
Well, and what do you think, Shanna? Who are you most excited to see back, and who do you think is going to have the most important role this week?
It's funny because Janet and I kind of have the same answer. I'm number 1, Jair Alexander all day. I talked to Krista Watson the other day on my Women Crushing It Wednesday podcast, plug. Christian Watson's mom, who is just amazing. Follow her. She's incredible. You should have her on here, Andy. She's a hoot.
Right.
But we were talking about it. Someone like a Jair Alexander, I love because his personality, I feel like he's the kind that when he enters the room, you either feed off of him and it hypes you up, or you hate him, right? So for us, he's going to hype that team up. They're going to be so happy that he's back. And then he's going to go up against Davante Adams. And I think that's going to be such a great matchup. Fingers crossed that it happens. That'll be so cool to watch. So yeah, Jair is number 1 for me. I'm a fan of Luke Musgrave. I really like him a lot. So I'm going to go him number 2. And then Jenkins number 3. Nothing against him. I know that the offensive line is better with him. But I'm going to go Jair 110%. Because again, it's not just him as a player. It's the vibe that he brings as well that I love. It's like Aaron Jones, the Aaron Jones effect. I just feel better when they're around.
Yeah, as an NFL fan first, it's really hard not to want to see Jair and Devontae just go head to head in this game, like period. Like you could just almost do like a side game of just Jair versus Devontae. There should almost be like a little like corner box of just like those, especially when the Packers are on defense, just watching those two go against each other. Because I remember in practice every single day, as soon as Devontae Adams got up for anything, whether it was team drills, whether it was one-on-ones, didn't matter. Jair would run up and he would go up to guard Devontae, and it was just iron sharpening iron every single day at practice. These two know each other so incredibly well. The last thing you want to see is Devontae not be out there because of his shoulder, Jair not be out there because of his back. You want to see those two going at it 100% and just being the two best players, arguably at their positions in the NFL, at least in the conversation. That should be such a fun matchup if we get to see it. But to both of your points, to me, this Raiders team is really a two-person team. It's Max Crosby on defense and Devontae Adams on offense. Those are the two players where if you're the opposing, offense and defensive coordinators, those are the two players you cannot let beat you in this game. So while I think Elton is important to the overall health of this offensive line and making sure you're not going to see a ton of Max Crosby versus Elton, you're going to see a lot versus Zach Tom, probably Rasheed Walker playing on the edges. So I think he's important overall. But I think the bigger one is if you want to control one of those guys, Jair's the best way to do that. So I think you can make a really strong argument for Jair. I would put Elton second just because we saw this Packers offensive line last week. They desperately need just some of their guys back. John Runyon Jr. is a player who is on the injured report, or like he will be on the injury report. He did not practice on Tuesday. He was with the rehab group. So I think I don't think they want to go into this game with Royce Newman at one guard and then, Sean Ryan probably having to play the other, having to move Zach Tom around. So I think Elton's going to be of the utmost importance as well. But hopefully all three of those guys can go, and it'll be a really, really nice, just get for Green Bay to see all those guys back on the field.
Yeah, and I think what you said too with Jair and Devontae, it'd be cool if they were like mic'd up. Which I know, like it's, obviously probably not their favorite thing to do because they're probably like thinking about what they're going to say, but that would be entertaining in itself, I feel like.
But if you if you think about Jair's mentality and his attitude, though, I really don't think he would care what he would say. Like, he wouldn't be thinking about it. He would just say whatever he wants because he knows he's that guy. Yeah, he knows he's that guy. He says whatever he wants, and I love it so much.
Me too. I love his confidence. Like, I just think that goes like, so, and especially when you have the skill to back it up, I love it so much. Like, no one likes the cocky guy, but when you're a confident guy that can back it up, it's like, okay, Jair, I'm here for it. Let's go.
You say it. Yeah, say what you want to say.
Totally agree. Again, it's just so good for football, especially Monday Night Football. That's the matchup everyone wants to watch is Jair versus Devontae. And it already sucked that we didn't get to see Jamal Williams for the Saints when he was back in town. Would suck if we didn't get to see Devontae this time around. I know, like, from a Packers standpoint, you can certainly make the argument that Devontae not playing certainly helps you, but like football is better when everyone's at their full health and actually getting to go best against the best and figuring out what you have as a team. So I want to see Devontae. Go ahead.
I have a question for you, Andy. So this is always an interesting thing to me when a really, really loved player leaves a team. Yeah. So I was watching the game the other day with my fiance, and he's like, I don't want to cheer for Devontae, but I still have a soft spot for him. Do you still cheer for players when they leave the team? Because, I mean, obviously Devontae, he was so loved, I feel like. We were just talking about Jamal Williams, stuff like that. Do you still cheer for those players? Not necessarily the team overall, but the players themselves.
Yeah. Janet, do you want to answer that first? Then I'll answer. I want to know how you feel about this as well.
I do have a huge soft spot to see Cobb and Lazard consoling Zach Wilson on the sidelines. It just made my heart melt. Those are my guys. That's where they it's the culture in Green Bay to be such a family play, like just that family connection within the players. So Devontae, I feel like, is always going to be somebody I'm going to root for no matter what team he's on. Cobb as well, Lazard, just you see your guys on other teams, and it breaks your heart because you're like, what would he have been had he still been with our team today? But in the end, it's a business. You got to keep moving.
I think it's always circumstantial, right? Like when Jimmy Graham puts 2 crappy years together for the Packers and then he goes and leaves somewhere else, you're like, no, screw that guy. Like you don't necessarily want to see him succeed. Or when somebody goes to the Vikings or Bears, it's a lot harder. I think maybe one of the only people in history that there isn't like a huge frustration for might be like Mercedes Lewis going to the Bears, just because I think everyone knew that I think they wanted to see the Packers bring him back, and it didn't seem like the Packers really had a ton of interest in doing so. So I think they gave him a little bit more forgiveness, and it's not like he's really played that much for Chicago anyway. But I think overall, it just depends on the player. What was their impact in Green Bay? How did they leave Green Bay? Was it on good terms? Was it the Packers' fault, or was it the players' fault? And then, just what team did they go to? Greg Jennings going to the Vikings, not so great. Jamal Williams goes to the Lions, even though it's a divisional team. The Lions were sort of like lovable losers for so long that you're like, oh yeah, he can go to the Lions. That's fine. That's no big deal. So I think it's always circumstantial, but I think far more often than not, fans would love to give players like they would love to cheer for players and go to another team. You love when they maybe go to like an AFC team that's like the AFC South, and you don't really have to see them all that often, or maybe your Bills, Shanna, but
with Micah Hyde.
Micah Hyde, yeah.
People love Micah
Exactly.
Hyde still.
Casey Hayward, those sort of like when you went to the Chargers. So, but Janet, we got Brewer problems, my friend. We got some major Brewer problems.
No, I'm
I know.
actually watching the updates on my phone, and I haven't gotten anything.
Don't look. Throw your phone away. Throw it away. Don't look. Yeah. We got 3-2 Diamondbacks, so not great. But
Nice.
Comeback Brewers coming. They're not going to lose this one. They're going to keep fighting. All right, had a super chat come in. Jordan, thanks so much for that. Appreciate the kind words. Thanks for unbiased insight. How do you think Stokes fits into the corner room? So I think that's a really interesting point of discussion, because maybe most important, I don't know the answer. I think he's going to have to earn his spot back. I see Rasul as being one of the starters, period. I also see Jair clearly being the other starter. And then you get into this problem because Stokes isn't a slot guy. Jair can be a slot guy, but you don't want him to do it, at least on early downs. He can do it on some obvious passing downs, but you don't want him having to go and fill against tight ends and fullbacks and pulling offensive linemen. He's had shoulder injuries already, so you don't want him to do that full time. Rasul is not a slot. We saw that last year. They tried that and it did not go the way that you want. Rasul is just an outside corner through and through. So I think he's going to have to earn that spot. And then Carrington Valentine, basically an outside corner too. So you end up with this sort of 4 good outside corners with not, Nixon kind of being your only guy that kind of plays in the slot. I would like to see down the road, maybe Jair play more in the slot in some obvious pass situations and get Stokes on the field in that situation. I think Stokes probably comes in dime, and then they have used Rasul some in slot and dime situations, which I think is fine. But he's going to have to, I think, battle back and show that he's one of the top corners. And in the meantime, I think he's probably just the dime corner with Rasul going inside. But Janet, Shanna, either of you guys feel differently?
No.
I know. I was like, no.
I think you nailed it, Andy. I think you nailed it. Yeah.
Deal. No, I mean, it's just a really interesting conversation because, again, he struggled a bit last year. He's got amazing speed. But then you also run into all right, if you're the fourth corner, you kind of have to be playing special teams. Are they going to use him a ton on special teams? You do just kind of get into a little bit of cornerback math, which isn't quite as fun and isn't always the coolest conversation to talk about, but it will be interesting to see how they sort of work him back in. But I would expect Dime to begin with, and then he has to work his way up from there. But how great would it have been these past couple of weeks when Jair was out for 2 weeks if Stokes had been able to fill in? Rasul might miss a couple of weeks. You don't know what's going to happen. So just having that depth is going to be super important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious thing is he's been gone for so long. So I think you really can't even answer it until he's back in. It's kind of just we'll see when he gets in there kind of scenario.
Yeah, very much so.
I think I saw him mention that he's willing to play any role as well. So that's a good mindset to have when you've been out for a year, and now we've got this complete team. We've got all these rookies that we're filling in. So if he's willing to play any role, I think, fit him where he can go right now at this point.
Can he set an edge? Can he put on 200 pounds and play defensive tackle and stop the run? Because Green Bay could use a few more of those players at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we had another question come in. I wanted to answer this one because I think it's kind of fun. Who would be a Dame Lillard type of trade you wish the Packers could make? So, of course, the Bucks make the big Damian Lillard trade, which is a really, really fun one. We don't see those trades happen as often. I'm going to be super, super lame on this one, which is sort of my MO sometimes. But I think we learned with the Chase Claypool trade last year that sometimes the best trades are the ones that you don't make. And I think a lot of times when a team is getting rid of or jettisoning another player or willing to sell them off, it's for a reason. And we get really excited about, oh, this player's available. I mean, how many times have been like Will Fuller a few years ago? Everyone wanted the Packers to trade for Will Fuller, and he was going to be the answer. Like, I don't know, that dude played another down on like period in the NFL after that like trade deadline. Like, he was just out of the league. Chase Claypool, everyone wanted the Packers to like trade for Chase Claypool. Like, if they would have traded, like, you don't either
they
have,
didn't. Like the drama.
Either you have no Jaden Reed or Luke Musgrave if you have Chase Claypool right now. Those are their 2 second-round picks. That one of those second-round picks would have been gone, and you don't have one of those guys if you have Chase Claypool, the guy that the Bears are begging to not show up to their facilities so that they don't even want him there. So it's really fun to like think about, you know, potential trades and how they could affect your team. But just know that far more often than not, there's a reason that the opposing team is willing to get rid of that player. And a lot of times bringing that guy on isn't going to be the big win that you think it's going to be. Now, on the Bucs side of things, I don't think that's the case. I do think Damian Lillard is going to be a massive pickup, very similar to what Drew Holiday was before that. But in the NFL, sometimes it's a little bit different.
I mean, I don't know. They're like, and this is not just because he has been in the news so much, but I mean, you think the Packers would say no to like a Travis Kelce? Because I wouldn't say no to a Travis Kelce. And it has nothing to do with Taylor, it has nothing to do with my love for her. But I'm just saying, like, that's the first person that came to my mind, because I'm trying to think age-wise how old people are, because we kind of went through this with Jonathan Taylor too, right? But Jonathan Taylor is not, I don't know how old Jonathan Taylor is off the top of my
25.
head.
He's like 25.
Okay. Yeah. But here's the thing too. I don't know about you guys, and I'm sorry, I don't know all your ages, but when I watch football, I'm like, oh my God, he's so old. And he's like 32. I'm like, I'm dust. I'm done.
I'm 32.
Yeah, like, but like, you know what I mean? You watch that, you're like, I am, and there's like NFL coaches who are younger than you. I'm like, I am dust. But anyway, those were kind of the first 2 that came to my mind. Again, not that Jonathan Taylor is older by any means. He's 25, but that's kind of who I was thinking of, that if I were to pick someone that was kind of a, you know who they are player already, those are the 2 that I would think of.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a Badger. So Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
I kept making those memes with a sign like "Free Jonathan Taylor to the Packers, please, please."
I know. I would feel the same way. I would be happy if you went to the Packers or the Bills, even though James Cook is looking good for my hometown team. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what JT is doing. He's just floating out in the abyss. Someone scoop him.
Yeah.
You have to think it's going to happen sooner rather than later that he ends up on another team prior to the trade deadline. Luckily, all of us are 23 years old, so we don't have to worry about seeing some of those older coaches and players in the league, which makes it a little bit easier on our end. I don't know that JT would have been an equivalent trade to Damian Lillard. I think Damian Lillard's like a top 15 player in the league. I don't think you can say the same thing about Jonathan Taylor, but like equating NBA trades to NFL trades is so incredibly hard. Like, you probably are in that, like, Travis Kelce, like top of the top player. Like, you could argue that, on the reverse, like trading Devontae Adams away was like trading away a Damian Lillard. The Packers have done more of that with Devontae and Aaron being traded away than them actually going out and trading big time for a player. So, but I think equivalent is really, really tough. But we'll see. All right, Brewers get one out at least there. Sorry, not to digress too much. All right. Nick asks, is it me or does it seem like opposing teams dictate the game when playing the Pack? Dan Campbell is a bit of a meathead, but his guys bring it each week.
I love Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is like a Jair Alexander. When he's around, I feel hyped. Like, I feel like I could wake up in the morning and have Dan Campbell scream in my face. And I'd be like, okay, all right, yeah, I'm up. Let's go. Like, I enjoy his energy.
I'm pretty sure I have notes here where every time I write Dan Campbell's name, I put a little heart next to it. I love him so much. I agree. Watching Hard Knocks made me really love him as a coach so much. And he's a good coach. People don't understand that. He's a great coach. So, I love him so much.
So funny.
The Packers, I'm going to check this. I'm going to check my my recollection is that the Packers interviewed Dan Campbell when they hired Matt LaFleur. But now I want to check it to see if that's true.
Can you imagine a Dan Campbell Packers?
Yeah. So here were the interviews: Jim Caldwell, Chuck Pagano, Joe Philbin, Josh McDaniels, Brian Flores, Dan Campbell, Pete Carmichael, Todd Monken, Matt LaFleur, and Adam Gase.
No.
That's a really rough group of coaches, by the way. Like Brian Flores was interesting in Miami, and then they had the weirdo stuff that happened. And obviously now he's the defensive coordinator in Minnesota. Josh McDaniels has not had a great stint with the Raiders. They'll obviously get to see him up close and personal on Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Chuck Pagano didn't really work out in Chicago, like as defensive coordinator. Adam Gase didn't turn out. That's a rough group, but Dan Campbell, that would have been an interesting one had they decided to go in that direction.
Yeah, he would have been great. I would have liked that.
Yeah, me too. That would have been great.
Back to the question though, does it feel like opposing teams dictate the game when playing the Pack? So I think we've been talking a lot all week is that this is a team that needs a little bit more physicality and needs to play with a little bit more intensity. And if you are going to be a team on the offensive line that is not the most physically imposing offensive line, if you're going to be a defensive front that wants to get after the quarterback and rush the passer, maybe focus a little bit more on speed and coverage on the back end and not be that physically intimidating defense, then yes, there are going to be teams, and we've seen it in the past with the 49ers. We saw it this week with the Lions, that if they have that style of team, they're going to be able to dictate certain terms to Green Bay. I will say there's no perfect calculus to building the perfect NFL team. Sometimes like you can have a more physical team, and then all of a sudden a team like the Miami Dolphins might spread you out and just run by you with Tyreek Hill and Devin H. and like all those guys. So like you have to be able to sort of flex week in and week out to what your opposing team is doing. But yeah, I think certainly this past week, we saw the Lions just beat up Green Bay in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and they did dictate. So I think that's something that Green Bay has to continue to work on and figure out how they play a better brand and more physical brand of football when they do go against the 49ers and the Lions and those type of teams. All right. Another super chat here. Thanks so much, Vex. Always appreciate you coming in the chats. The Packers continue to try and play for both the present and the future. If you fire Barry this offseason, you can develop the defense. So yes and no. I don't think they're quite as much in no man's land of trying to play for both the present and the future as it might seem. I do think that this is a team that is the youngest in football. They are clearly developing players for the future. You have a couple veterans baked in with Aaron Jones, Preston Smith, David Bakhtiari, obviously who's hurt right now. But I think for the most part, this is a team that's trending in the same direction with young players trying to develop at the same time while keeping a couple veterans around to sort of get them there in the meantime. I think part of that was due to like Jones and Bakhtiari and Preston. Like you basically just couldn't get off their contracts. You basically had to sort of just keep them on the team for the time being and play it out until you can kind of get off of those contracts and really go young. But in the meantime, you also have them as veterans on the team that are helping this team out and trying to win some football games. So it'll be interesting. And I think we've seen this team being able to be competitive while you do have, like, if they could just get healthy and all of a sudden you've got Devondre back and Jair back, and we're not probably going to see Bakhtiari, but Elton Jenkins back and all these guys. If you have Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, like the bulk of the really good like veteran players on this team have unfortunately been hurt. So I think they do have the ability to win some football games now if they can finally get healthy, But I also think that they are still very, very much building towards the future.
100%. I agree with you. I think that this Packer team is so much more fun to watch in that aspect versus last year. You can say what you want about Aaron Rodgers. It's very polarizing, obviously. So we won't go down that route. But, with this team, it just seems like the young guys are just so hungry and they're just so happy to be there. And I would rather watch a team like that is striving to be better in the future.
Shout out Dusty Evely. Thanks so much for watching, Dusty. You're the best. And yes, Dusty brings up a phenomenal point, is that he is an incredibly good coach and those guys know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And a couple things that I want to mention in regards to that is it's the coaching is a big piece of that and knowing exactly where you're supposed to be. And if you are a bit more of a finesse team like Green Bay is, and that, like not having the maulers, even more important to have the great attention to detail and making sure that you are hitting your landmarks and making sure you're playing with good pad level and paying attention to the fundamentals. And Green Bay hasn't done a great job of that recently, and in Detroit specifically very much has, and the best of the best. You can see it in San Francisco. You can see it in Philly. Those teams do have great attention to detail, and along with the physicality that they have. And then I think you can also see that this Lions team right now, and it feels weird to say, but they're just a more mature football team for where they're at right now. As again, Green Bay is the youngest team in the NFL. They just drafted a ton of these guys. Green Bay knows what they're getting into this season with so many young players on this team. This is a developmental season. This is an observation season. It's a bit of a transition season. You can call it whatever adjective that you want, but Detroit is just a couple of years ahead of Green Bay when they had all those early draft picks and have developed them over the course of the past few seasons. So they're just kind of in different spots right now. But Dusty, you are the best, and of course, bring up a very, very great point as well.
I think the
Janet?
average age of the Packer player is 25. Sorry.
You're good.
my alarm is 25. So I agree. I think this is a very young team, and I think they still have a lot of time to develop throughout the season. I want to tell people, like, remember, we're on week 4. I don't want to get shot or anything. Like, stop trying to be positive, but we are just on week 4, and then we've got a bye week coming up after the Raiders, and then we also had all those injuries, so it's been difficult to see consistency throughout the season when it's just begun. I feel like everybody's expecting us to come in and play out we did play out the gates against the Bears, but I think they all thought this is the team. Week 1, we're ready. This is it. We're gonna be amazing, Super Bowl. But it's gonna take a while to get there in regards to how young these guys are. They're still finding their their rhythm.
I love Jonathan's comment here. I laughed out loud when I saw it pop up because, I mean, as Andy knows, I am, and Janet, you'll learn this from me too, I'm a diehard Bills fan. So when I see rebuild, it gives me like PTSD because I knew that from 1999 until 2017. Yes, until 2017 when Tyrod Taylor took the Bills to the playoffs, so rebuild gives me anxiety. So we need to find a word besides rebuild to talk about these Packers. I think it's starting fresh is what I'm going to call this Packers team. You are starting with a leader who is just so composed for the position that he's in, for the little time that he's had as a starting quarterback. So we are going to say starting fresh, Jonathan.
No rebuild per Shanna.
No rebuild.
And Janet, I think you bring up a really great point too. First of all, we all had sort of this expectation going in. If this is a young team, it's probably going to be around a 500 team. So like, if your expectation going in is a 500 team that's going to have ups and downs, and you see a 500 team that has ups and downs, like what this is what we expected. We knew this sort of going in. But I think to your greater point is, I don't think we've seen the real Packers team yet. And it's really tough to like just forget how many key players have missed these 4 games for Green Bay. And then when you do get guys back like Christian Watson and Aaron Jones, and they're on a pitch count and you're trying to like get them in and out of the game, like that's sort of disjointing as well. And then you're like, everyone's in and out and not getting into a rhythm. Rashawn Gary is still on a pitch count. Like we haven't seen this real team. David Bakhtiari plays week 1, looks great, and then is probably out for the remainder of the season. Like, I don't know that we're ever going to get to see what this exact Packer team looked like, because I don't think we're going to get Bakhtiari back at this point. So I do think that's a really important thing to remember as well. And I do think that if they can maybe get through this game and then have that bye week, and all of a sudden you get everyone, maybe Sans, Bakhtiari back healthy at this point, like I think you will see a different brand of football. And when you have games where against this, like the fourth quarter against the Falcons, you go 3 and out or 4 and out in the last 3 drives, and then the Saints first 3 quarters are completely disjointed, and you can't, like, it's 24-3 by your 13th offensive play against the Lions. Like, you're just never in rhythm. And I think everyone is like, well, you got to get Jones the ball more. You got to get Musgrave the ball more. You got to get Dobbs the ball more. You got to get Watson more involved. And it's like, yeah, all of those guys would be if you picked up a first down every now and again and actually got to run more plays on offense. So I don't think we've seen this real Packers team yet. I think there's a lot better brand of football that they can play. And that's the goal for the remainder of this year, is getting them to that point where towards the end of this year, those last 4 games where they play some really easy opponents, by the way, can they be playing their last brand of football, maybe put together a 4-1 stretch towards the end of the year, whether that's for a playoff run or not, don't care. I just want to see them playing their best football towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, their schedule isn't too horrible. I mean, you still have the Broncos to play. You have the Giants to play. You have the Steelers. I'm just like looking through quickly. I think, the Panthers are garbage. The Vikings, the ones that are obviously going to be a little bit sneakier are going to be the Chiefs, of course. And then, I mean, I don't know. I think the Buccaneers might be like kind of for real too. What do you say?
Fighting Baker Mayfield. I said they're sneaky. The Fighting Baker Mayfields.
Oh, yes, that's what I mean. Like, I mean, Baker looks good. I'm not gonna put all my eggs in the Baker Mayfield basket, but I think that he looks pretty good. But yeah, the Packers schedule isn't terrible overall. So yeah, I think that they have a good chance of really, what did I see on here? A refresh, not a rebuild. The refresh is fresh. Yes, there she is, Danny. Wait, it says also is Shanna from Buffalo too. Who else is from Buffalo? Is Danny
She
from Buffalo?
is. Yeah,
Danny's
she
from
is.
Buffalo.
Shut the front door. How did I not know this?
Yeah, she's from there too.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Okay.
Danny, we'll talk about this later because Andy's gonna be like, Shanna, no more Josh Allen. That's enough. So I'll talk to you later about that, Danny.
No, you can talk about Josh Allen all you want to take my mind off of this Brewers game, which is
I
now
know.
5-2 Arizona. So, Shanna, this is your podcast from here on out. Shannon and I are taking off. You guys have a good rest of your night. This is a nightmare. I know. Oh God. Okay.
Well,
Double
I mean,
play.
I've seen Baker Mayfield for the past 2 years against the Packers, and both games he lost. So if I show up to this game, he might just lose again. And that's with 2 different teams. He was with the Browns, the Rams, and if he goes with the Buccaneers, this will be my 3rd year seeing him with 3 different teams.
Hey, I mean, he's almost like a little cockroach of the NFL. He's not the guy. Baker Mayfield will live on as much as you squash him.
Yeah, where did that okay, so I want to talk about this one really quick. And by the way, Baker is like one of those all-time what ifs. Like I always think it's interesting. Like if Aaron Rodgers would have went 1 overall to the 49ers, would he have had the same career? Because they would have had to play him right away. He was not ready to play right away. If Alex Smith would have went to the Packers and sat behind Brett Favre, would that have changed his trajectory? If Tom Brady went anywhere besides New England, what happens? Like Baker Mayfield goes to the freaking Browns. He has like 3 coaches or coordinators in the first 3 seasons of his career. Like it's just everything's disjointed. It's the worst place for him to go. He probably gets overdrafted as the number 1 overall pick. Like, and then he like right after that, what was it? The Panthers? Like, where did he go? Was it the Panthers after that? And then he has then he gets released and he has to go and play for the Rams on like short notice. Like so if he actually settles in somewhere and they actually have an like good for him, good on him for like finding a way.
It's that law, everything that could go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, no, seriously. Was that Murphy's Law? Something like
Murphy's Law, yeah. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Or in Green Bay, we call it Mark Murphy's Law. Everything. All right. So I wanted to get to this, though. We expect trials and tribulations from the young offense, not the defense consisting of 7 or 8 first rounders. So one of the things, and we talked about what kind of year this is. Is it a rebuild? Is it a refresh? Or whatever adjective we want to use. To me, this is an evaluation year. And it's an evaluation year for Jordan Love, for Matt LaFleur, for the offensive coaching staff, for all these young players, for Joe Barry, for everyone, right? But I think one of the things that needs to really be evaluated is on the defensive side of the ball. We know that they invested a ton, 8 first-round picks, a big contract for Devondre Campbell, contract for Rasul Douglas. You pick up Darnell Savage's 5th-year option and guarantee a bunch of money there. Kenny Clark's on a big contract. Preston Smith is on a big contract. Like, if you invest that many first-round picks and that much money, clearly your expectation is to be not only a good defense, your expectation is to be a very good, if not one of the best defenses in the league, which then the evaluation needs to be, did they buy the wrong groceries or did they hire the wrong chef? Because I do think we all want to point to Joe Barry and say he doesn't know how to use these guys and it's the scheme and everything like that. And clearly there are pieces of that. However, what I do want to point out is, and I talked about this with Justice Mosqueda. That episode's going to air early on Thursday morning, so everyone can check that out. Him and I went into great detail with this, but there are not many of these premium paid players and premium first-round picks that are playing at an extremely high level, or some of them have just been out hurt. Jair Alexander is a great example. I thought he had a not great week 2, and I think anyone would probably back that up. That's not indicative of who he is. He's going to be just fine. He's a great corner, but he didn't have a great week 2, and then he missed weeks 3 and week 4. You have Devondre Campbell, one of those big play players who has missed the past couple weeks basically, and is probably going to miss this week as well. And then you start looking at the first-round picks. Darnell Savage plays nothing like his first-round pick status. Is that Joe Barry's fault? I don't think so. I think that's more on, Darnell Savage not playing like a first-round pick. That is somebody that Brian Gutekunst signed. I would argue that maybe the player who is most playing at the level that you would expect them to for a first-round pick and is really good on run defense and pass defense is Kenny Clark. That's not a that's not a Brian Gutekunst pick. That is a Ted Thompson pick from back in the day. Devontae Wyatt doesn't really play like that high-end player. Quay Walker, some flashes here and there, but doesn't play like that. Rashawn Gary's on a pitch count right now. Eric Stokes has been out on the PUP list. Quay Walker, again, some positives, some negatives. Like, we can go through all of these guys, but there is not a premium 1A selection or high paid player that is playing like a high end Clay Matthews, like a Nick Collins, like a Charles Woodson, like any of those sort of players. And I think Rashawn, once he gets back to his full, snap count and everything like that, he could easily be one of the players that play like that. When Jair gets back and healthy, he could easily be a player that plays like that. But for 2023, for all the first round picks and big, free agents and everything like that, not a lot are playing like that, or they have been out hurt. So I'm not willing to forgive and Joe Barry entirely and say it's just not his fault. But I do think there is something to the fact of the players need to play better. The evaluations on some of these players need to be better. The coaches, the positional coaches need to coach better, and the scheme needs to be better. I don't think it's just one thing, as actually Joe Barry said this week in his press conference. Soapbox off. I'll let you guys take it from there.
I agree, though. I think we need to fit all the pieces. We can't just expect it to be one fix. Like you said earlier, it's not just one thing. With this entire team, it's all the pieces need to fit. We can't just blame one area. Obviously, we saw the game against the Lions. It was both offense and defense and special teams. It was the entire team.
Yep. No, it was. And like, we go back, like it would be one thing, I think, if this offense was putting up, 30 points per game and they were still losing. I'm not saying there, again, hasn't been let down. The Falcons game is a great example of a letdown against a team who's been abysmal on offense in the other games that they've played. They've scored 13 points in their last 2 games combined. Green Bay allowed them to score 13 points in the fourth quarter when they had a 12-point lead. So again, there is plenty of blame to go around on all parties here. But it's not like the offense is helping them out, even in that fourth quarter against the Falcons. In that Falcons game where they did give up 13 points, the offense goes 3 and out, 4 and out, can't get the defense any help, can't get them any rest. And it's just that uncomplimentary football that's kind of tearing everyone down and not helping out anyone. If the offense can pick up some first downs and put up some points, it's going to help the defense. If the defense can get some 3 and outs and get the ball back to the offense, it's going to help the offense. If the special teams can stop some of their snafus and mistakes, going to help the offense and the defense. So it just takes everyone. And I think this is sort of indicative of a young team. And I do think they're going to play better moving forward.
I have 2 things. Number one, I love that Jan and I have been hydrating this whole time. Number 2, you have not been, Andrew. Okay, good. Because I was a little concerned for your hydration levels. Number 2, I don't know. I'm going to go against what you guys said. And I'm going to say, when you see something that's the common denominator, and you're right, it's not like the offense has been like spectacular, but I am going to blame the chef, not the ingredients, because I think that the ingredients are all there and we all want it to be the best sauce of all time. But I don't think that it is being made correctly. I don't think it's being stirred right. I'm not the best chef or cook, whatever, but that is what I am thinking. I think that Joe Barry is not the answer, and I don't ever want to place the blame on one person, but I think if you had to, I'm going with the chef on it. I'm saying give someone else the apron.
I don't think the sauce has been good enough, and I do think the chef bears plenty of blame if we're going to continue with this analogy. I do agree with that. I don't think anyone can point to anything with Joe Barry and be like, oh, I love that he does this. I don't think there's anything that you can point to and be like, oh, that was all Joe Barry. Love that guy. Like, it's really hard to sit and defend any specific thing. And as much as I don't think they've got the return on investments for some of the things that they have put in from a free agency and draft standpoint that you would like based on all of that stuff, it's still, there's enough pieces there. There's enough ingredients there for it to be better, for it not to be bad. And unfortunately, at times it has been bad. So I'm with you. I'm not a Joe Barry defender per se. I thought they should have moved on in the offseason. I just think that it's not just that. And I think there has to be other things that are looked at. And that's why they're going to play, at least 13 more games this season. I still am messed up always by the 17 game schedule, but they're still going to play 13 more games and there's going to be a lot more evaluation to do. I don't think that evaluation is probably going to go well for Joe Barry, but I think some other pieces of this need to step up as well. All right, couple more super chats, and then we are going to get out of here. Andy and company, you're the best. Appreciate all the content. 4 games in, love is composed and maybe the dude. We draft a line safety and a young explosive running back in the offseason, make a run next year. I think as Aaron Nagler said earlier this year, let's just figure out the Raiders first, and then we'll get to all of that.
Child. What did
Yes,
he say? Sweet summer child. Let's just beat the Raiders.
Beat the Raiders first, and then we can sort of start talking about making runs. But you bring up great points about some positions that need to be addressed. Those are the three positions verbatim that I think Green Bay is going to have to really look at hard in the offseason. At offensive line, Bakhtiari might have played his last down as a Green Bay Packer. You've got John Runyon Jr. as a free agent, and you've got Yosh Nijman, who's a free agent. You're not exactly, I think, sure yet what Josh Myers is going to be long-term. And if you don't know by now, you probably kind of know that you might need to start going in a different direction there as well. So I think offensive line is going to be a big piece of this. Safety, you have two players under contract next year. Zane Anderson, who was inactive and then has been hurt ever since. I don't think that's your solution. And Anthony Johnson Jr., who in a couple games ago, they only had to deactivate one player who was healthy. He was the guy they deactivated as the one player who was healthy. So not probably a great sign there. And then running back, Aaron Jones, 30 years old, getting to the end of the line. And then Dylan's a free agent. I know, old. Again, we're only 23, so we don't have to worry about that yet. But I do think those are the positions. And then, it's all about, surrounding Jordan with playmakers, getting him some offensive line. And then I think you'll start seeing that completion percentage come up. And I think you'll see even a better version of Jordan. But as to whether or not he's the guy, it's again what we're going to evaluate through the rest of the season. But I think it's off to a pretty solid start so far through 4 games.
Totally.
All right.
I think so.
One more super chat here. Packers need a lot of attitude, pride, and please God, more tackling and more line play. But how for, do we have 0 safeties? Tired of Brian Gutekunst drafting. So what I will say to that last part, Vex, is that at some point when you have a team that has so much dead salary cap and you have only so many draft picks, there's only so many positions that they can address in one offseason. And they went and they got a couple tight ends in the draft. They get 3 wide receivers. They go in a variety of different directions. And you have to sort of know what type of draft that it was. This was a really deep tight end class. They get Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft in the 2nd and 3rd round. It was a pretty deep wide receiver class. And they go out and they get Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks and Grant Dubose. Like, they attacked the draft in the areas where it was strong. I know that, Brian Branch is tearing it up right now in Detroit, and that I'm sure would have been a phenomenal pick for Green Bay. You still lose on Luke Musgrave or Jaden Reed if that's the direction that you go with in the 2nd round in that situation. So there's always going to be a give and take there. But outside of Branch, by all indications, and I think we've kind of seen this play out a little bit, it was a really weak safety draft. So they decided to take a flyer on Anthony Johnson Jr. in the 7th round, which I liked, I understood, and not attacking that position sooner, I think was probably smart based on the draft that they were in. So Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes a little bit of time to figure out and vet out where you need to sort of make those changes. And I think safety will be a position that they attack very aggressively next year in the draft, as we just talked about. Thoughts on that?
Rome wasn't refreshed in a day.
In a day.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, several things needed to be addressed. And I think safety was obviously the last of our worries at that moment. But like you said, I think this refresh.
Yeah. You got it.
I think we're going on the right path. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Luke Musgrave was such a great pick. Like I said, I don't know what it is, but I just want the best for him. I think he is really, really good. I'm looking forward to seeing him, especially Tunyon was kind of a failure last year. So I am looking forward to, seeing Musgrave just, take that place. So yeah, I mean, again, it's a refresh next year, safeties.
And we're
going to get bracelets made for that too. Safeties and no hammies.
And you can't say that the very, few times that we've seen Lucas Van Ness he has been exciting to me. I don't know. He has been very exciting to watch. So he's just going to get better at this point.
He's going to be just fine. That dude is too freakishly athletic. Yeah. He is going to learn to convert speed to power even better. He plays with his hair on fire. He was starting to come into his own a little bit more until he had the arm injury. He is going to be just fine. It may take a little bit, of time, like it did with Rashawn Gary a little bit. That's fine. He's going to be a really good player. I have zero doubt about that whatsoever. Yeah, I think that's kind of all we wanted to cover today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Shanna, by the way, Shanna, I love that you just tell it like it is. You're willing to bury Joe Barry. You were willing to just throw anyone under the bus that needs to be thrown under the bus. I absolutely love it. You're the best.
Listen, I just call it like it is. It gets me in trouble quite a bit at work, but that's okay. Someone's got to be that person. So here I am. Here I am. And I'm so glad, my little Jan friend, I'm so glad that we got to meet here.
Yes.
If you guys haven't seen on 97.3 The Game, there's a great video of her at which game was it? It was just a couple weeks.
It was a home opener, yeah.
Oh, it was the home opener. Okay, yeah. So the home opener, girlfriend goes hard. You can see like the love for her team so much. I loved it. I thought it was great.
So it was really funny because they did recognize me, and everyone was just kind of standing around, like just kind of like cows in a pasture. We were all just standing around, and they gave me the mic, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And they're like, oh, we want to do like a segment with all the fans. And I was like, okay, this is my thing. It's such as I just stood, nobody helped me on there where I was standing. I just got up on my own. I crawled up there, and I was like, everybody make your way to the G. And I just took full reins. I was like, this is me. This is my scene right here. Let's go.
I loved it.
But it was a lot of fun.
It was awesome. It was awesome. Shanna, tell the amazing listeners where they can find all your work and where we can find you on the radio.
Yeah, so I'm with FM 106.1 in Milwaukee and 96.3 Star Country in Madison. I do afternoons for both country shows. It's funny when I do my reports, we were talking about Luke Musgrave, and it's hard for me because there's Luke Musgrave and then there's Casey Musgraves. And then we have Quay Walker and we have Clay Walker. So I'm like, I need to not have my country side cross over into my football side. But yeah, so I'm there 97.3 The Game, Tuesdays and Thursdays with Drew and KB. And then, of course, every Packer game except for Monday night. Unfortunately, I will not be on for this one. The wonderful Mike Heller will be on for me because I am having sinus surgery tomorrow. Really exciting stuff. So I will not be on Monday night, but you can usually find me on the Packers Radio Network, halftime and post-game reports.
Well, good luck with that. That sounds terrible, but I'm sure
it's horrible. It's going to be horrible. Uh-huh.
Come back better than ever, I am sure. Make sure to give her a follow. Janet, where can we find you and all your amazing work?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. All my handles are the same. OHHJNJN. Ojanjan. I'm on Lombardi Sweep every Wednesday at 8. We change it due to the games. And then as well as Cheese All That, which is a new project that we've come up with. And it's all the ladies getting together to talk about football. So I think, Shanna, I want to invite you on the show.
Oh, I love that name too. Cheese All That. That's so cute.
Yes, I'll talk to you about that. I'll DM you about that because I would really like you on the show. I think it'd be so much fun.
I would love that. Thank you.
Girl talk football. And yeah, that's basically where you can find me.
Look at the Pack a Day podcast, just bringing people together. You guys are going to do a podcast, and then you're going to find Danny, who's out in Buffalo, and you're going to make friends, and it's just all because of Pack a Day, of course.
I'm so excited. And thank you, Andy. I really, really appreciate you, inviting us to be on this. Like I said, I've listened to the podcast for a while now. So I really, really appreciate it. It's been fun. Like I looked up at the time and I could not believe how long we've been doing it. It just didn't feel like that. It went by so fast.
I didn't want to end it because I know as soon as I end it, I got to finish watching this Brewer game, which I don't think I really want to do right now. So no, you guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone make sure to go follow both of them out on Twitter and follow all of their work. They're both incredibly fun. As you can tell, they bring the energy every single time. That's going to do it for us. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. Thank you so much for joining us. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.